Good morning. I decided to just do a really quick, very simple tutorial on slow stitching. It's kind of like the word at of the moment at the moment, and you know it doesn't have to be complicated. It really doesn't. And so I'm just gonna make sure you can see what I'm seeing. Yeah. I'm going to start off with this little piece. I did some lino printing yesterday. It's a little fish that I carved, and I kept looking at it. I was going to do it on the machine, and I thought, actually, no. I think just some hand stitched waves here will just make him pop to life. I'm also going to start sort of a bit revolutionary. I've done this. It was just strips of fabric, so I've caught them all down with machine stitching, but I don't know if you can see, I've left quite big. Let me just see if you can see that. Yeah, I haven't mega quilted it, if you like. I've just gone across a couple of times and a bit there. And what I'm going to do is, I've got this circle shape. I'm going to draw around the circle, and then with this really dark red and burgundy perle cotton. It's not an, well, yeah, you use it for embroidery, but anyway, it's not like your DMC. I'm going to draw the circle and follow round with the dark red and keep overlapping them, and just put quite a few circles on here because I think that will be enough. There's a little bit of hand stitching here because that's how I started off, but it was driving me nuts because I had it on my lap and everything kept falling off. So I thought if I just do some very light machine quilting, I'm hoping you can see the lines. Let me just get it a little bit closer. You can see I haven't quilted the life out of it. I mean, particularly there's a big gap there. I just caught down what I needed to, basically. Okay. I'll move it a bit slower, otherwise that'll make you go squiff. And these are just scraps out of my scrap bin, and that's that out of the pink bag, basically. So yeah, I'm going to draw the circles on, overlap or space. I don't know, I haven't quite worked this out yet, but I thought I'd leave that there as a backdrop. Might be a bit busy, but I'll move it if it is. So with this little fella, I say sometimes you can start with something that big and it's quite daunting. So I thought I'd just sit and stitch this lino print. Now I have got a sashiko needle, which is really long. Sorry, I'm trying to see if you can see what I'm seeing. Yeah, it's really long, so you don't have to have, I mean, you don't have to have a sashiko needle. I just picked these up at a craft show. When did I get them? Last September, and I've not really used them, I'll be honest with you. And all it is just a simple running stitch. Now the art of it is to try and get your stitches as even as possible. It doesn't always work, but it's just a running stitch, and that is all it is. It's nothing daunting, nothing scary. Just take your time, and it's quite nice. It's quite meditative, which I think is the buzzword of the day, and it makes your mind just switch off. And you know, you just stitch away. Let's pull that one through. I've doubled up the thread. It's a sorry, there's another pearly one, and it's a variegated blue one, so really lovely. I don't know what brand these are. Finca. It's a Finca number 8. Just see if you can focus on that. Sorry, there we are. Finca number 8. And I've got a couple of these. I've got the blue one, the red one, which I'm going to use in a minute. And I've got a purple one and a green one, which I think is downstairs. Okay. So yeah, I've doubled it up because I really want the colours to... What do I want them to do? I want them to change a bit more quickly than they would do if I just used a single thread, if that makes any sense whatsoever. If you haven't got the Finca or Perle cottons, I have been recently, bear with me, sorry, I've just been using ordinary sewing thread. These are ones that I use for my free motion embroidery, and they're variegated. If you Sorry, that's not focusing. If you double that up in your needle, or even if you take off a really long piece, cut it in half, and then so you've got like 4 strands, that works just as well as an embroidery thread. Okay, so, and then, you know, if you've got loads of cottons like I have, you haven't necessarily got to go out and get this stuff. I've had these Finca rolls for quite some time now, so all I'm doing is just going to backwards and forwards with this. Actually, what I might do is skip one. I'm just embroidering the white lines. I just felt that's how I was going to machine it, and I thought, no, that's a bit of a cheat. So anyway, it's so small that it'll be easier just to do this one by hand. But there's no rush. I mean, you know, you sit and do what you like. You haven't got to... I mean, as I say, I'm following these lines, but if you're doing more of an abstract piece like this, again, I have, in parts of this, I've gone sideways as well as up and down. So, you know, the sky's the limit, as I say, and then I'm going to do the circles. So I'll just do a little bit more of this, and I'll show you with the circles. These are very freshly lino printed. They're still a little bit sticky. I can feel the paint takes a little bit of time to dry, so. But a nice, simple, little easy project like this, you know, it's just something to sit. You can hold this on your lap in front of the TV at night. This one, come down there. I'm just carrying the threads at the back. As long as you don't pull tight, you don't have a problem. I know all you professional embroiderers out there have just had a fit, but you know, I'm not a professional embroiderer. I'm going to carry it around the back of his tail. And slow stitching doesn't just have to be running stitch, it can be cross stitch, or any, you know, feather stitch, whatever your favourite stitch is, blanket stitch. They're all out there. I mean, there is plenty, and I mean plenty of tutorials on YouTube for all the different stitches. So all you've got to do is just type it into the search bar. That's what I love about YouTube. I really, you know, I really do. It's just full of information. I hope it never ever closes. I think we'll all be a bit lost if it ever does. Right, so you're kind of getting the idea, and it gives you nice... Just see if you can see that. Yeah, he's upside down. There we are. So you can see my stitches in here. Okay, so I'm just doing the blue at the moment. I intend to go back in and do... I've got a variegated green and I can't see it for the life of me now. Anyway, another option is that this is almost like a string I've got here, so I could use that. I just want to get a, you know, bit more different colours in. Yeah, look for your variegateds. I love variegated threads, and you know, just go for it. Oh, there's the yellow version of that one as well. Oh, there's the purple. I know I had the purple somewhere. So yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes, so you know, have a good look around. That's a handy little thing. It's a little vintage. Just shows you those embroidery stitches. Get it out the right way for you. That does help, doesn't it? So I just keep that in there just to remind myself of some of the stitches. So just, I don't know, it came out of obviously out of a vintage embroidery something or other. So right, so I'll put the fish to the side now. I'll finish him off later. So with this one, I'm going to use my friction pen. You do have to be careful with these. In cold temperatures, the ink can come back up, but basically it disappears when you iron. And that's, you know, that's why it's beloved by people in, you know, that do fabric stuff, because you just draw it on. It's like it's kind of like a ballpoint pen, and you get a nice outline, she says. But yeah, you do have to be careful with it. So when I stitch, I will make sure I stitch exactly on that line. Let's come down here. I'm not going to do tons of these, but I will do a few. So I won't do it all on screen with you guys. It'll drive you insane. But it's quite nice to have them crossing, because you get these secondary shapes within your piece. So it's got a notch there. Keep slipping into the notch. You can use anything, a bowl, whatever you want really, whatever size circles you want. You just find something circular and draw around it. If you haven't got a friction pen, either an air erasable one, although I would just do one or two at a time, because you know, they do take a little time to stitch, and by the time you get to them, they might have disappeared on you. So I shall mark all mine out, because this doesn't go until you put heat on it, like I said. No idea what this will look like. Just had this feeling that I wanted to do a different shape. You know, you can do squares, blocks of squares, and you can sort of do an outline of a square and then fill it in with the stitching going through. So it's completely up to your imagination, I'll be honest with you. I've no idea what this will look like. I can get rid of the marks if it's really horrendous. So thinking one more over here, and that should be quite a nice balance. So bear with me. I'll just do one circle on screen, and then in my next normal video I'll update you on where I am with it. Right, I think that'll do. You can always add, you know, don't get too caught up in it. Let me just get my needle off the blue. I'm just going to use single thread on this because this one is really dark, and yeah, it should be enough. So I'm going to start with going to thread this end so that this end, I'll thread this end so that this end shows straight away. If that makes any sense whatsoever. I think you can find sashiko needles all sorts of places, or just go for a long embroidery needle. So I just happened to see these and got one. Right, let me see if I can I zoom you in? I don't know how this works on this. I'll come up to you. Okay, so there's my circle. You just see the outline there. So just start anywhere. I really want to try and get on that line. You could do chain stitch if you like chain stitch, or back stitch, or like I say, whatever you want to do, to be honest. Just try and keep your stitches as even as possible. This is why these sashiko needles are really nice to work with, because they are long, thin, sharp as anything. I just happened to see them at the we have a big craft show at West Point every year, and it just caught my eye. I just saw the word sashiko and I was like, oh, I'd never done it, but I really wanted to have a go at it. So just making sure you can see this. Yeah. And this is all you're doing. My circle's disappeared. Where are you? There. Let me draw that in so I should go wonky. I know what I'm like. Bear with me. It's better. Yeah, I was going wonky already. I knew I would. But it goes remarkably quickly. This, you know, it looks painful, but actually it really doesn't take that long. And it gives it such a lovely handmade look, which, like I say, at the moment is really on trend with the lockdown and everything. Everybody became really focused on slowing down and you know, not having to rush to work all the time and stuff like that. I unfortunately got designated as a key worker, so I had to had to work. Don't pull too tight. Pull your fabric out and let your stitches lay. It comes from I think it's either no, I think it's Japan or China, and it basically it's a mending stitch. And there was also something I read about what should we say, peasant folk, for want of a better word, were not allowed to have decorative clothes. They had to all wear the same indigo blue dyed stuff and that. So to sneak on decoration, the women, I think it's predominantly done by women, sort of made out they were making patches on their clothes and used the sashiko method to add design. I mean, you know, you Google sashiko, and it's Sashiko, I think it's spelled. And there's some of the work is just phenomenal. It's beautiful. So and like I say, it's good if you have a TV. I personally don't, but if you do and you're sitting in the evening, this is something that's really nice. Or even in the garden, you know, because what do you need? You need a needle thread and a bit of cloth. It's not like you need a bucket of equipment to go with it. So now I just want to space these. Let's come back a bit because I need to space it a little bit better than that so that I don't end up with a double at the end. Still going to anyway. Right, okay, I'll just have to do an odd shaped stitch there. Okay, put it through to the back. I'm just going to fasten this one off, bear with me. If I can pick up my needle. Okay. So you can see the pattern on the back here, but on the front, because I've used that quite bold, so you can imagine overall I think it's going to look great. And of course the colour is going to variegate down to a red. As I pull it off the roll, off the reel, it's changing colour to a red and that. And if I don't like it, I'll just go over it with pink. I mean, it's not a problem, but just leave it in. And I say you can always cover it over if you really don't like it. Just do a patch over it. You know, it's just layers of fabric, and it's kind of. My nan used to do an awful lot of patchwork because start underneath, Susan, that helps. She was very much, well, as that generation were, it was make do and mend because they lived through the Second World War, and you know, there wasn't supplies on hand, as we all know. So she used to take a bag of our old clothes that were sort of ripped and torn and whatever, and 3 weeks later would come back a quilt. And it wasn't all hand stitched. She did have a, you know, one of the Singer machines, the one. Oh, in fact, I don't know. She had a treadle one, not the hand one. She had a treadle one, which I loved. I learnt to sew on that. It was great. And yeah, so she would bring back this sort of crazy patchwork quilt thing, which I don't know. I don't know where they are actually. I don't know, because my mum died quite a few years ago now, and so whether they are still at the house with my dad, I don't know. I'd have to have a look for them. But and they weighed a ton. I don't know if you remember those days. My other nan, we used to have feather eider downs. God, they were so heavy, but oh, so warm. I mean, it was lovely. She lived in a cottage in Norfolk, and in the winter we always woke up with ice on the inside of the windows. It was freezing. But yeah, there it is. We grew up tough in those days, didn't we? Eh? Right. So I'm just going to do this one more and then I'll let you go. I've got a couple of videos I want to do today, but I just thought, you know, if you're starting a little bit of this, or you're a little bit sort of daunted by it, or, you know, whatever. I mean, even if you've just got a piece of, what could you do? I mean, just a piece of denim. If you've got an old pair of jeans, just grab hold of it, draw a shape on it, and I would probably outline it and then just fill it with running stitch. I mean, you know, there is absolutely no rocket science to this. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just taking the needle in and out, in and out. You don't even have to have a Shashiko needle. These are convenient because they're long and you can get a lot of stitches on each needle. You don't need it. Just have a go. And it's amazing how calming it is. Let's say, sit in the garden or sit on the bus. You know, it doesn't take a lot. You just have a little scrap of fabric with you. I know when I used to commute in on the bus, I used to have a little bag with my crochet in, and I would get quite a few granny squares done in the 40 minutes that I was on my bus journey, and you know, turn up at work and do the same on the way home as well. So, yeah, it's just something to do, takes your mind off, stops you gazing out of the window. I actually find, you know, it's almost like a modern day version of meditating. You can just switch the brain off because you're not having to think. You are just simply in and out of a piece of fabric. I'm going to guesstimate the rest of this circle. I have no idea. That'll do. Close enough. I don't know if you're seeing this. I hope you are. This will be the finishing touch for this piece of work here. I don't know what I'm going to make out of it. It could be a bag, it could be a junk journal, I don't know. I just love making things like this and then thinking of a use for them. Right, see how quickly that was. Of course, it helps if you don't get your needle caught up in the threads underneath. Those Shashiko needles are sharp. Ow. Oh, I'll pull it under. I've got to cut it off anyway. Okay. Right, so there we are. That's 2 circles. And then when I do this third one, it's going to go lighter again. So that'll go in and fill in there. You're not actually seeing much of that, are you? There we are. Okay, and like I say, the black lines will disappear when I put the iron on it because it's the friction pen, that one. Okay, I'll make that do for now. Oh, I don't know, what's the time? 24 minutes. Oh, do one more. Let's do one more. I try and keep them under half an hour, otherwise they take forever to upload. So what I might do is deliberately choose. Now there's some lighter colours coming through now, so let's drop it there. Let's get the lighter colours working. It's quite a dark red, that, but I'm just trying to use up all the stuff that I've got in this room. or, you know, and not deliberately go out and think, oh, I need to go and buy a pink one. I don't. I've got red. It'll work. There's red in the background. That'll be fine. We get too hooked up on detail sometimes instead of just looking in our stash. I mean, since lockdown, you know, I've gone through quite a lot of things, and I've found so much stuff that I've completely forgotten I had. So it's been good not to, you know, not to just be able to pop to the shop. And of course, you know, there's the money that you save as well. So feel free to fast forward if you want to. You might find your fingers get a little bit sore when you do a lot of stitching, so I would recommend a thimble. The company Prim do a nice one, which is part silicone with a metal tip on it, and I'm finding that really comfortable. It's downstairs, unfortunately. That's where I do a lot of my stitching, downstairs. So because it's my evening work, I get my daylight bulb on and I'll sit and stitch and either listen to something on YouTube or Netflix or something. So try and keep them as even as you can. It doesn't matter if they're not terribly even. It's got a lovely feel to this fabric. It really feels quite quilted already. Because I tend to do this and then think of a use of it afterwards. So, if you haven't got fabric or you've got a load of ribbons or anything like that, you can stitch ribbons down, especially if you've got the wide ones. If you look at previous video, I did do a piece where I'd stitched a load of wide ribbons down into a strip and turned it into pouches basically. So go and have a look at that. I don't know where it is, but sorry if you can hear my neighbours and all the shouting about out the front. I've got a line of stitching going through there, so I'm getting myself a bit confused about where I need to go. So I don't see any harm in mixing machine and hand, because you've got the strength and the durability. Well, both are strong and durable, but I was struggling to do this by hand on my knee basically, because as I say, all the bits kept flopping off. So in the end, I got quite impatient with it actually, and I just said, right, I'm going to stitch on the machine for a bit just to get the worst, you know, just to get them held down. I mean, I could have, you know, backed it all with Bond web and stuff, but I don't really want to have to do that. So because it's kind of like a waste of resources and materials. So there you go. You can see them crossing over now. So, you know, I suppose really I could have gone with a bigger circle here. I might do that because I can iron this and get rid of these little ones. So I could go in with a big one here and then maybe a little one down here. So yeah, it's all subject to change. But look at the effect it gives you. You know, it's that lovely sort of old quilty effect. So once I've given this a wash, it'll pucker even more, and it'll, you know, it'll have that nice vintage stitched look. So yeah, don't, you know, if you don't want to start on a big piece, grab yourself, as I say, just a piece of denim. It doesn't even have to have an image on it. This is one that I machined on because I was trying out my tension, but you know, that's just 3-4 pieces of fabric, and I just, it is machine, I must admit, but look at the effect you can get. It gives you such a lovely, so if you was to stitch that all by hand, and that's just 4 little scraps of fabric. So I was just playing around with the tension. So yeah, don't think it has to be a masterpiece from day one. I've got another bit here, another lino print I done. I'm going to go in there with stitch as well. I've just machined around the border, and I'm going to go in and hand stitch. I usually make these into landscapes, these little things, because you know, you get the image of the sun and the fields and stuff like that, but I want to try and change the look of it by orientating it differently, which I think that is the way I'd like it, and you know, make it more into like a stellar picture. I don't know, sounds a bit pompous, doesn't it? Anyway, the other thing, sorry, it's just come to me, is grab a piece of fabric with a nice print on it. I want to show you that. Hang on, bear with me, 2 seconds. Because, sorry, 2 secs, I'll be back. So this one here, I machine embroidered this one, but if you was to get a piece of, this is just a piece of curtaining fabric, and then, you know, did the running stitch around there, and maybe a few running stitches in between, running stitch around the leaves. It was already like this, it was already quilted like this, so I didn't do that. As I say, it was just a piece of curtain I picked up from a discount store. Again, running stitch around there, and then you could always just completely cover the whole thing in running stitches. You don't have to have anything, you know, I've printed these. I mean, this is obviously, you know, fabric that I've got out of my scrap bag, but it's my scrap busting, you know, this is what I like to do with it, and then that then becomes one big piece of fabric that I can turn into something else. So right, I've bored you enough. I'm gonna let you go. Okay, I've got some more videos to do this afternoon, but I just wanted to do this little one on some slow stitching just to give you some ideas. All right, bye bye.